Not everyone eats everything that's on the table. A man was reading something from a book by the light of a tallow candle that was set on one end of a crude table. The old account book was heavily worn, and the lettering appeared to be difficult to read because the man would occasionally hold the page near the candle flame to brighten it. Then the half of the room would become obscured by the shadow of the book, hiding several faces and figures, because there were 8 other men in the room in addition to the reader. With the room being small and the 7 of them sitting against the rough log walls not far from the table, they were silent and unmoving. Any one of them might have touched the 8th man by reaching out an arm. He was lying on the table face up, with his arms by his sides and partially covered by a sheet. He had passed away. No one talked, and the man holding the book wasn't reading aloud. Everyone appeared to be waiting for something to happen except for the deceased man, who was alone and without anticipation. Through the window-like opening, the pitch-black darkness outside let in all the strange sounds of a night in the woods, including the long, unidentified note of a far-off coyote, the drone of massive, blundering beetles, the strange cries of night birds, which differ greatly from those of day birds, the still, pulsing thrill of ceaseless insects in trees, and the entire enigmatic chorus of tiny sounds that always seem to have been only partially heard when they have abruptly ceased, as if conscious of an indiscretion. However, none of this was noticed in that group. Even in the weak light of the lone candle, it was clear from every wrinkle of their rough faces that they were not overly hooked to idle curiosity in unimportant things. They were obviously local men, woodsmen, and farmers. The individual reading was slightly different, although there was something about his clothing that suggested a certain connection with the creatures in his surroundings. One could have concluded that he was of the world, worldly. His outfit would have been unlikely to be approved in San Francisco. His footwear was not typical of an urban setting, and the hat, which was the only one not covered, was so exquisite that it would have been lost on someone who would have thought it was just a piece of personal ornamentation. The man had a pretty prepossessing face with a trace of sternness, which he may have developed as befitting an authoritative figure, being a coroner, that is. He was reading a book that had been discovered among the deceased man's belongings in his cabin, where the inquest was currently being held, and he had possession of it by virtue of his office. Upon concluding his reading, the coroner tucked the book into his breast pocket. Just then, someone pushed open the door, and a young man walked in. He was obviously not of mountain descent because of his attire, which belonged to city dwellers, but his clothes were dusty from travel. To be honest, he had been running rather hard to get their opinions. The coroner gave a nod. Nobody else said hello. The coroner responded, "We have been waiting for you. It is necessary to have done with this business tonight." The young man grinned. He said, "I'm sorry I kept you. I went away not to evade your summons, but to post to my newspaper an account of what I suppose I am called back to relate." The coroner grinned. "The account that you posted to your newspaper," he said, "differs, probably, from that which you will give here under oath." "That," the other person responded, looking visibly flushed and fairly angrily, "is as you please. I have a copy of everything I sent, and I used multiple sheets of paper. It was written as fiction rather than news because it is so amazing. It might be included in my under oath testimony, but you say it is in court. That is nothing to you, sir, if I also swear that it is true." The coroner stared at the ground while remaining silent. The guys encircling the cabin spoke in low tones, seldom taking their eyes off the witness's face. The coroner now raised his head and declared, "We will resume the inquest." The men took off their caps. The witness took an oath. "What is your name?" inquired the coroner. "William Harker." "Age?" 27. "You knew the deceased, Hugh Morgan?" "Yes." "You were with him when he died?" "Near him." "How did that happen? Your presence, I mean." "I was visiting him at this place to shoot and fish. A Part of my purpose, however, was to study him and his odd, solitary way of life. He seemed a good model for a character in fiction. I sometimes write stories,